In this video, I'll show you how to share your DJI Terra 2D maps and 3D models using Nira. I'll also show you how you can make some edits to the model in DJI Modify and also share that within Nira as well. So if you're happy with the model as it is in DJI Terra, you can simply just bring up the landing page or the main mission listing and click the folder of the project you want to share. So in this instance, I have City Hall Roof. I click the folder here, and this gives me all the folders that DJI Terra produced when processing this model. So I just want to go into Nira, and I can simply drag and drop all these folders in here. What I actually usually like to do is go to the top folder of all the listings of all the projects and just click and drag and drop this. You'll notice that Nira will give you a listing of all the files of what is going to be shared. And you'll notice it's only 21 files, whereas if I was to show you the properties of this folder, it's significantly more files, so around 1,735 files that have been produced with DJI Terra. So Nira doesn't need all the files, so there's no sense in actually uploading everything. It's just the files that's necessary for bringing in the georeferenced model. What it also asked you, the pop-up is gone now, so let me just do this again. You'll notice that it also is asking you for the folder of fit photos as well. So what I need to do is go and try to find that. And here I have the photos here. So this was a fairly simple project of 245 photos. So what I want to do is, again, go back to the main folder and then drag and drop that. So it's really two steps. First, you upload the DJI Terra project, and then you go and find the folders for the photos and upload that as well. It is essentially usually in two separate locations, so that's why it's two separate steps. And then at this point, you can name it. So I'll just give it the same name as my DJI Terra project. It doesn't have to be. It could be whatever name you want, but just for consistency, I'll do that. I can also just name it DJI Terra and click next, and then click photogrammetry. Because I'd like to make sure this is preserving all the features of the photogrammetry model, including the photos. This is the option to choose, and then you click Start Upload. And within a few seconds, it'll start uploading. It does need to check the files to basically create a hash of every file and make sure that whatever I'm uploading on the server is going to match whatever is being uploaded from your device. And now it's starting. So it shouldn't take more than a few seconds to upload, and then finally we'll be able to view it in Nira. But the next thing I want to do is show you how you can take this model and maybe edit it. So in this circumstance, there are a lot of floating parts and other areas that I don't necessarily want to keep. And certainly I can clean this up in Nira, and I'll show you how you can do that. But oftentimes it might be better to clean this up either in DJI Terra or in DJI Modify. So if you were to try to clean this up in DJI Terra, the thing you'll want to do is within the 2D map or 3D map, you'll want to enable the advanced ROI region of interest block. And here, if you go to this section here, you'll be able to specify a region that you'd like to restrict the area of producing the model. So we have a lot of excess area here, and you can see there's some floating parts here. And DJI Terra ended up producing all of that extra area because it was just set to auto. And we didn't necessarily need all that, so it would have been better if we restricted it here. Since the model's already been processed, we can't change it now, so we'd have to start over with this project. Or we could bring this into DJI Modify, which we'll do in a second. But last thing I'll mention is just the general settings you'll want to use when processing your models in DJI Terra. So first things first, you'll want to make sure in the arrow triangulation, XML needs to be enabled. Ideally, you would want to use, especially if you're using drone photos, to enable a known coordinate system. You can use whatever coordinate system you prefer, but just make sure that it's the same across the arrow triangulation, the 2D map, and the 3D model. So by default, the arrow triangulation is usually a UTM coordinate system based on wherever the photos were captured. But for whatever reason, at least with version 4.46, the known coordinate system is used in the 3D mesh or 3D model section. Now, if we want to bring this model into, actually, let me expand on the things I want to share, which is to also set the resolution to 100%. This will produce the highest quality 3D model that DJI Terra can produce based on the photos that you're providing. And you want to make sure you enable OBJ. When you're doing the 2D map, the settings, again, make sure you're using the same coordinate system that you use for the arrow triangulation, and then you can choose whatever you want to do here. I think by default, fill hole intelligently is enabled. You definitely don't want to enable map tiling. That's definitely something you don't want, because Nira would prefer one large orthomosaic map than a bunch of tiled or small chunks. So that's one you want to make sure you leave off. And then the rest you can decide whether you want to leave on or off. And the same goes for when processing things here. You can choose what you'd like to do. In fact, if Nira now supports point cloud, so if you want to enable point clouds, you can do that. Again, we like to suggest setting things to high just so you get the best quality. And then also enable merge output for the point cloud as well. If you do want to use point cloud classification, you can do that. But DJI Terra currently limits your point cloud density to medium if you want it to also classify your points. In fact, if I try to enable that, let me just disable the 2D map here, you'll see a warning that comes up and says, hey, I'm not going to be able to set a ground point classification with the high setting. So you'll need to enable this to medium. So instead, what I would suggest doing is disabling point cloud classification and then just do your classification in another application. In fact, DJI Modify will let you classify points with the high quality settings. So DJI Terra has a limitation that DJI Modify does not. So I'm going to disable point cloud just in the interest of saving time and show you how to make some edits to this model using DJI Modify. So in order to use DJI Modify, one quick way of doing this is just enable this setting here. This would work. However, I think another option would be to just click PLY, and then you could basically produce a model and then manually bring in the data necessary into DJI Modify. Now, if you were to do this, really what will happen is DJI Terra will create more project files that Modify can directly read in, but it also wants to restart some stuff, which might be fine. I don't think this is going to be too consequential. In fact, let's try that. So we'll go to check the quality report really quickly, and you'll notice that we've processed this model. It's on a laptop, so it's not going to be the fastest process, but it processed the model in about an hour. And what I'll do now is just reprocess the model, and hopefully it won't take another full hour, and we'll leave this little thing here. Hopefully this shows up. I'm not sure if it's going to show up in the video recording, but it's the timer of the recording, and let this reprocess. So let's try it and see what happens and see how long it ends up taking. So here we are. I don't think I changed any other settings, and let's let it go. So I'm going to also bring in my task manager so you can see what aspects of the computer is being utilized while it's processing. And then we'll come back once it's done processing to see what it looks like. Okay, so it finished, and it wasn't the fastest I was expecting, but it didn't take it the full hour it took to normally process it. So you'll see that now it was an hour and 5 minutes. So it took about another 10 minutes to produce the files that were necessary for DJI Modify. And just to be clear, if we were to go to the folder here and explore what files DJI Modify needs, there's just a simple DJI Modify project, so that's not very consequential. The main thing that DJI Modify needs is this PLY file. So it's a collection of mesh data and texture data. And when you create the setting to enable editable in DJI Modify, you'll now have a quick option to actually jump right into DJI Modify with this model. So we'll go ahead and click this button here. That will launch DJI Modify, which is coming up here, and we'll be able to make some quick edits to the model. If you wanted to, you can also just not enable the setting here and just enable the PLY setting. And what is cool about that is if I was to go back to the main landing page in DJI Modify, you can click Create Project and then modify either the 3D mesh or the point cloud. And it'll ask you for all the files you'll necessarily need, including the B3DM file, the PLY file, the XML file. And you can basically just take these files directly from the folder of DJI Modify. So they're all buried in here, and you can just find them individually. And it'll tell you or give you a hint in terms of where that files or where those files will be located. Doing it this way is kind of nice in case you have maybe two machines, or you have two individuals that are maybe one processing in DJI Terra and another doing the edits in DJI Modify, and again, they're on separate machines. So this is kind of handy to use this workflow, because you can just create or capture the entire folder here and then just pick and choose the files you need manually without having to jump to it from DJI Terra. So let's just go back to Modify, click on the project here. And again, DJI Modify provides a wide selection of tools. So what we'll first do is click and try to remove a bunch of the floating parts. So it's really nice and handy that it is able to highlight the parts that it wants to delete. So we'll just quickly click delete. The other features are repair water surface. So we'll click that just to take a look. Obviously there's no water that we're looking at here, so nothing really we want to do there. The next section is the flatten, or actually these set of tools we'll look at next. So because we've already made some changes to the model, when we go to these options, it's going to ask us to render it. That's essentially it wants us to kind of bake in the changes we made. And hopefully that won't take too long. I'll bring up our little widget here so we can see how long it takes. Again, I'm not sure if this is going to show up in the recording or not, but hopefully it does. And again, if this was on a desktop machine, everything would be much, much faster. Doing anything on a laptop as fast as they've become is still significantly slower than what you'll get on a high-end desktop. Okay, looks like it's finished. And now we have the model without the floating parts and ready to be edited using the flatten tool. So we're still now looking at the tiled mesh. In order to view or edit the model without tiling, we have to enable high quality model. So if you have multiple blocks, you'll have to pick the block that you want to edit and then click enable high quality. It says your computer is low on memory. So hopefully this should work. And again, just to kind of look at how much memory we're using now, we have a really modest laptop with 32 gigabytes and it's almost halfway used. So that should hopefully be enough. Let's find out. Another thing, another bit of memory we need to be concerned about is how much video RAM we have. With the laptop 4070, we have 8 gigabytes and it's really close to that budget. We're almost at 7. So it's just barely making it. So the flatten tool is a very versatile tool. It's called flatten, but you can also do a lot of other things, including deleting parts of the model. So let's just quickly try to do that. So I'm going to create a selection, and you can create sort of a marquee selection like this. And let's just focus in on the region. That's maybe not the best selection I wanted. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, I actually ended up getting a little bit more than I wanted. So I'm going to unselect and do that again. And again, I'm not very meticulous about this. I'm just very quickly doing this. And that might have been also a little bit less meticulous. So let's try that one more time. And let's just click unselect. Okay, looks like it's already done that. And let's see if we can get a nice top-down view. And we'll go over here and narrow that to just a little bit of the street and not try to capture any of the neighboring building. And hopefully that worked this time. So it looks like we have the building that we want. And now what we want to do is reverse that selection. And it looks like that's not an option. Is that an option? Okay, so that's not an option. So what we want to do is reverse it. So what we'll do instead is maybe just select everything. Let's just select everything. And then let's go back to our top view and set to subtract from our selection. And just maybe grab this. And here we are. And now we can click delete mesh. So now, again, this is probably going to take a few minutes. Oh, it didn't take too long. And what we can do next is take a look at our model. So just to be clear, this model was produced just with a bunch of photos from above the roof. So the facade is not really well reconstructed. Not the fault of DJI Terra, just the fact that we didn't have a lot of photos that were used to reconstruct that portion. If we wanted to, we can remove this truck. Let's just quickly do that. It might not produce the best model, but let's just go ahead and do that. So I'll just create a quick little selection around this truck like this. Actually, I needed to go back to add. So let's go over here. And do something like this. And I may want to remove the selection of this pole here, so we don't include that. And what I'll do this time is click flatten. And after a few seconds, it's now flattened. And then what you can now do is, what is it? There's a feature here called repair texture. So now let's just grab maybe a portion of this here and just pull it. Actually, that's not the workflow. We'll want to undo that. Actually, we'll just leave that. And really what I'm going to do instead is just click this to try to see if we can repair the texture. I don't use this tool obviously enough to remember the exact workflow, but we're figuring this out as we go. Okay, so we've got somewhat of a removed truck from this, and now we have a model that we're quite happy with. Or let's just say we have a model that we're quite happy with. And now we'll just click save. And I'm not sure what happened, but when I click save, my recording stopped. So I'm going to redo the last portion of this video, which is to show you how to bring in the model from DJI Modify into Nira. So again, we just click save, and then the next option is to go and click export output. So this will give you an option as to all the different file types that you can output from DJI Modify. We really only want the OBJ. You cannot disable the B3DM file, so that's going to be forced upon you whether you want it or not. So that's okay. We'll just click OK, and then let's just create a folder inside of the project and just call it export. And here we are. And so we'll just create export, and then I'm just going to paste that here. And let's just wait for this to finish exporting. This shouldn't take too long, maybe a couple minutes. Okay, so it's finished the export process, and what we end up with is a folder that looks like this. So it has the B3DM files and the OBJ. So the OBJ is the one we want. So if we were to try to upload this project again, so we'll just go all the way to the top folder, and then we'll bring up Nira, and we'll go to this and just drag and drop it. You'll notice that it's still uploading the 21 files that we would have uploaded if we hadn't made the modifications in DJI Modify at all. So it's essentially ignoring everything in the Modify folder. And it's really focused on the files that are here, which is specifically these here. So this is the 17 mesh and texture files. And if we were to compare that with the DJI Modify, this is the, actually it's in the export folder. It looks like it's created 15. So it's a fewer texture files, which makes sense because we deleted a portion of the model. And so what we really want is this data. And we really don't even need the B3DM because that's just stuff that's going to be ignored by Nira anyway. So there's several ways of doing this. What I like to do is go to the DJI Terra folder and more or less delete this OBJ data. If you want to be careful and not delete it, you can certainly copy it or cut it out and move it to another folder. So we'll just create another folder here and just say old OBJ, and I'll just dump this into there. And then we'll go over here and then just grab the block data and then dump this into this. And that's it. Now we have all the data. Actually, I copied it there, but I probably should have just moved it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the data that's been produced out of DJI Modify in the separate folder, and now I have it just here. In fact, I could probably just delete the entire the directory of exports from DJI Modify because we don't really need that anymore anyway. And if we ever did, we could just manually export it again. So I hope that makes sense. That basically now will produce all the files that we need in the directories that we need them. And so let's just go ahead and start that process, and we'll go over here and then say, let's just call this City Hall Roof. And just to be clear, we'll call this DJI Modify. And you'll notice that this time it has fewer files. So instead of the 21, it's 19. And again, because there's 2 less textures. So let's just go ahead and upload this, and we'll go over here and we'll wait for this to upload. Again, it shouldn't take too long. While this is uploading, not really suggested, but you can create another tab and load the old one and take a look at this. So here it is. And again, it's a little bit slow to navigate because I'm currently uploading data. So Nira would like to saturate your network while you're uploading, so it's not a great time to be viewing a file. But you'll see that this is the original file. And again, I could have cleaned things up in Nira. So if I go to viewport, clipping volume, I could adjust the clipping volume here. And that's useful to do if you don't have the time to edit things in DJI Modify or to create that region of interest setting inside of Terra. But it's always suggested to do that in Terra first. So the steps are to, again, to create the arrow triangulation, and then using the tie points or the data that DJI Terra produces, you can visualize the general region of what you want to use. But again, there are times where it might still create some excess data. So here you can clean things up a little bit more here. So that does that. Let's see. And let's, of course, we want to just click save. And now we'll go and check things on here. So it's now finished uploading, and it looks like it's already finished processing. It only took about a second to process. And let's take a look at this model. And you'll see much nicer, much cleaner. We have the tweaked textures. Everything is still geo-referenced, so you can still see that we've got the location of everything, and we've got it from Modify. So again, the main workflow, and just to recap, is to do all your work in Modify. Once you're done, you'll want to output the files and into some kind of a folder, which we've deleted, and then finally go back to or dig through your main mission folder, find the OBJ files, and then replace the OBJ, the MTL, and all the texture files, which are these JPEG files, with whatever you produced out of Modify. And that way you're not uploading redundant data, one that was produced in DJI Terra and one that was edited and outputted from DJI Modify. I hope that makes sense. Please let me know if you have any questions. This is the main workflow that'll hopefully get everything you want from either application into Nira. Bye now.